Welcome to episode 204 of the Campus Comics Cast. I'm Scott Reed, and I'm joined on this episode by
Mike Atchison.
And in this episode, we discuss who has the better catchphrase. Is it Doctor Strange with the Hoarry Hosts of Hoggoth, or Hercules with by the Zesty Zither of Zeus? We'll let you decide. I don't know, Mike. What do you think? What's the better catchphrase?
I mean, we've all heard about Doctor Strange's. This one came from a recent issue that we read, so I'm going with the Zesty Zither of Zeus. And I don't care what anybody says. And I'm going to say it out loud in public somewhere. I'm going to be in like the Starbucks line at the airport. And if something astounds me, I'm going to say it and see how many people look at me really weirdly.
All of them.
All of them, but I won't care. You know why? Nobody knows me.
Nobody knows. That's right. So what is a Zither? Do you know?
No, I'm glad you can tell me.
Well, if you don't know, apparently a zither is a flat bass with a bunch of strings on it. So it's a stringed instrument of some shape, form, or fashion.
And it's apparently,
so it's not just made up.
It's apparently zesty, which is not the normal adjective you would use for, a musical instrument. But maybe it just puts out the sounds that are that
I suspect there's a limit to the number of Z words that Stan Lee could come up with.
That he could be illiterate with, yeah.
Go with Zither and Zeus. So, yeah. I suspect it's more related to that. But so on this episode, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the first 5 appearances of Hercules, whose catchphrase, at least for one issue, is by the Zesty Zither of Zeus. Then we're going to talk about what we've been reading. Hopefully we'll remember to do a CLZ Shake this time. But first, we want to mention a couple of feedbacks from some listeners. So this is in regards to our last episode, the pre-orders episode, and in that we talked apparently a little bit about the Impossible Man. I think it was because I'm trying to remember why we talked about Impossible Man. I think he was going to be in an issue, and I think it came up.
Oh, I think I asked about. I remember. I asked you about him. That's all I remember. I don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and it came up that he was like maybe.
Oh, he was like
the
Marvel. Mitzapitalik, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there you go.
Easier to say his name.
Yeah, so Michael Cathro once again had a comment, and he recommended, if you're an Impossible Man fan, to read New Mutants Annual number 3, because in this one I remember this story. I'm going to have to read it again. But basically, Impossible Man and Warlock, now not Adam Warlock, this is the techno-organic Warlock, have a shape-shifting contest to see who the better shapeshifter is for the Marvel Universe. And then, as far Michael mentioned, the Absolute books from DC haven't interested him, but the Green Lantern is something that he does plan to try out. And then we talked about your last episode of the Roadshow, where you have Uncle Scrooge as one of the reads. So he mentioned that Don Rose's endeavor to chronicle Carl Barks' stories and fill in the details is amazing. He'll have to look at the book you were talking about, too. He also wanted to comment on the Diamond bankruptcy. So as for the Diamond bankruptcy, people can go directly to the publisher's website to see if there's an alternate way to get the books that may be affected. And that is true for some publishers, though not all publishers are going to, do the direct sales. So I still think we're going to see several months where some publishers don't have any new books coming out. And then he asked us to, at some point, for an episode, probably a non-pre-order episode, to talk about how we track our collections, what programs we use, what
Michael,
website.
You are after my own heart with that subject. I'd love
to. So maybe we'll do that, and then I hope this was as a joke. The last thing that he mentioned is don't forget to talk about the first 5 appearances of Kevin Sorbo's Hercules on this episode of first 5 Hercules. I can assure you we will probably, well, I guess I shouldn't say probably not. I don't really want to talk about Kevin Sorbo's Hercules. Even though it was a comic book, it's just not in my wheelhouse. And then Eric's from Long Box Review wanted to second the Planet Money series, where it's like we bought a superhero. Like, what's bad is I can't remember the exact title. I was able to listen to the last 3 episodes, including the Microface musical. But the comic is written by Alex Segura, and it is drawn by Jamal Igle. So,
that's a good
yeah,
one.
so that is something that I am definitely going to have to look into picking up, as long as it's not too ridiculously expensive, since it kind of was a short run. And then Eric also mentioned the Wonder Woman Historia. The hardcover edition came out a couple of years ago, but he's probably going to pick up the deluxe edition as well. So thank you, Michael and Eric, for the comments. They are much appreciated. So without further ado, should we talk about the first 5 appearances of Hercules?
Yeah, the first 5 and then some.
And then some. Oh, okay. I didn't really go to the and then some.
Well,
so.
I've got a little surprise, I guess. I've got a 1A and a 1B in addition to the 1. The first.
Oh, okay. So, all right. Okay.
Yeah.
I think I know where that's going. So
we talked about it before we started recording, but you lost connection for a second, so I think you missed out on my warning, and then I forgot to bring it up again. So.
So, Mike, well, so what are the first 5 appearances of Marvel's Hercules?
Well, okay, so because, Hercules, or Heracles in the Greek term, is a public domain character, fictional character. There are a lot of variations, a lot of versions. You'll see this character used in comics and stories all over the place, not necessarily the same as what the character that we're going to cover today at Marvel. But the first, even if you look on the Marvel fandom wiki, they are logging the first appearance, and we're not counting it for our purposes, right. Scott, right? So, right. But the first appearance they're counting is Young Allies, Volume 1, number 16. And that goes back to 1945, and it's a very short, a 5-page Tommy Time, that's Tyme, story where Tommy, who is fascinated with the legend of Hercules, uses his clock of the ages to go back in time and travel to ancient Greece and meet Hercules and help him defeat the giant named Antaeus, who's the son of the sea god Poseidon and the earth goddess Gaia. So, or Gaia, I think. So it's clearly not the Hercules that we're familiar with, but it was, for 5 pages, I enjoyed the heck out of that. I've looked. I was able to find the scans of those 5 pages online. It was a blast. It's a good. It's of its time, but it was good art, and it was a fun little story.
Yeah, it definitely, in my opinion, is the more traditional Greek mythology Hercules, not the Marvel Comics Greek mythology Hercules. Yeah. So so I do not count it as our Hercules that we're talking about.
Yeah, but it was just I just found myself in the research going way too deep probably than I needed to. So the second version of Hercules, that again is what I'm calling 1B, is Hercules that appeared in Avengers number 10. I don't have the year, but it was before the actual first appearance, that Journey into Mystery Annual 1. So I'm thinking it was like 63 or 64, where he was a space phantom summoned by Immortus to battle Thor, but he was defeated by him. And this version was retroactively revealed to be an imposter in Avengers Forever in 1998. So he's, again, not the real one, but it's some version of him. And I know
I need to look at that image and just take a peek at him, because Marvel does this periodically, where they actually, what popped into my brain was with the character Domino. Mm-hmm. All right, so Domino's first appearance was actually Copycat pretending to be Domino. So it's just like, that's not something that they've shied away from doing repeatedly over their history. And right now, I'm trying to find Hercules in that Avengers 10 on the Unlimited app just to kind of see what he looks like.
Well, in my notes, I put images of what I found online, so I can always email you.
Okay.
Those images.
Well, I see Goliath. Oh, here's Hercules, but he's got a it's probably much closer to a traditional Hercules, but he's got a club, not the mace. He's got like a little red swimsuit on.
Yeah.
You can definitely Jack Kirby, on the artwork there. So I would agree that that's not. Now, if you want to add a 1C, and it's not just Hercules, there actually is another character called Little Hercules.
Like Little Lotta, or
and I didn't go into. I just found while I was looking for that young ally issue just to kind of get a peek at it. Found a couple of images, and when I saw the characters, like, okay, that's your more traditional Greek mythology Hercules. But whenever I was searching for that, that's where I led me to this Little Hercules, which is a little kid, and he didn't have any super strength or anything like that. So Hercules has been used by Marvel multiple times, Marvel/Timely multiple times.
Yeah.
So
he's a very durable character in pop culture, in comics, and he just. I mean, DC's got their own version. They had, of course, the version that, enslaved the Amazons. What's that?
And Kevin Sorbo.
And Kevin Sorbo, yeah. Yep. And you had the Hercules Unbound from the 70s, and that's set in the future, like in the Commandy era. It's some wild stuff. I have that in my to-read pile because I'm doing that big 1970s
Captain Marvel, right?
Sorry. Oh, yeah, you get the Hercules that
ties into Captain Marvel.
Yeah,
so.
that's right.
So, Mike, do you remember where you were first introduced into the Marvel Hercules?
I think it was probably either Avengers Volume 3, number 2, so that's the Kurt Busiek, George Perez Avengers, or if it wasn't, because I have that issue, and I'm pretty sure I bought that off the shelves or had it shipped to me in the late 90s, but it may have been the JLA Avengers in 2003 because I know for sure I bought that. Now, I really think it's the Avengers. It was none of the 60s or 70s original Avengers stuff, no.
Well, for me, I actually think it was one of these earlier Avengers issues. So, to the best of my knowledge, probably where I was introduced to this character was in Avengers number 48. Now, I did not buy that off the shelf. So, in my hometown, there was a little newsstand for a while, and at the newsstand, this guy who was a comic book collector in my town, he would take his comics there, and they would sell his back issues for him. So, and I would go down there almost every day after getting money from my grandmother and go buy some of these books. And I believe at that time I bought Avengers 48, and I bought it primarily because it's the first appearance of the Dane Whitman Black Knight.
Oh, yeah.
But at that point, Hercules was a member of the Avengers team. So now it's possible, too, that, again, my first comic book came from a grocery store in my hometown. And then after I bought that book, I was buying some of the Marvel Marvel Super Action. Was it Triple Action or Super Action? Because they had both. Probably Marvel Super Action reprints of some Avengers stuff. So if it wasn't in that Avengers 48, then I was introduced to Hercules through one of those Marvel Super Action reprints.
Yeah. So
it's it's somewhere in the late 70s, early 80s that I was introduced to this character. So now. That being said, I've never been a huge Hercules fan myself. So,
yeah.
So what do you think about this character, Mike? What are your thoughts about Hercules as a character?
Well, I think he's different than most Marvel heroes. He's got a lot of bombast. I think he's, purposely written that way. Of course, that can get a little bit old, not just us, but to other characters in the stories. He's sort of the Guy Gardner maybe less rude, but still pretty rude, of the Avengers, and but he's also got quite a bit of appeal. He's got a good, look to him. He's got that Greek mythology look. I'm telling you, Greek mythology, they had it down. They had a lot of great characters that could be reinvented over the millennium. But I that was my initial thought. Even in the, I get it that he had somewhat generic powers, but he had that backstory that made for. I'd love to go back and read a lot of his stuff and just see what else they delved into, as far as his backstory.
Yeah, for me, Hercules at this point, and even into modern times, with a few exceptions, he was brought in when they just needed a big body for somebody to fight.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it boiled down to for me, which is I've always felt that this character is a little dull.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, he's just there to be the big bruiser. So whenever the Avengers needed a big bruiser, and for whatever reason, Thor or something wasn't available for the writing team who was on Avengers, so who can we bring in? Oh, let's bring in Hercules.
Yeah.
It's just like
he's
just another And I'll go ahead. I had this on my notes to talk about later, but I'm gonna go ahead and talk about this now. It's like they actually kind of played off on that. So if you are a fan of Hercules, one of the comics that you absolutely should read is Avengers number 262. And at this time, Hercules is on the team, and Namor the Submariner is on the team. And the cover is Namor fighting Hercules. All right? So, and basically what it boils down to is like Namor's being his normal brooding self. And for whatever reason, Hercules just comes up and picks a fight with him. So they just started whacking on each other. And at the end, it's like Namor finally is like, well, why are you doing this? And Hercules was like, you looked like you were in a bad mood, so I thought I'd fight you and cheer you up.
And that's the way
it's kind of...
Yeah, through these first 5 issues, that's sort of the way he portrays it. He's like almost exhilarated by the challenges. It doesn't matter if he's winning or losing or it's a draw.
He wants a good fight.
Yeah, it's a good fight. Oh, by the way, we haven't even actually mentioned the first 5 issues. We've talked all around it. But let me run them off real quick off the list. So the first appearance, legitimate that we're considering first appearance, yes. Journey into Mystery Annual #1 from June 1965 by Lee and Kirby. And then you got Journey into Mystery 124, November of 65, which it was a few months later on the shelves than that annual, but it was chronologically right after it. And then Journey into Mystery 125 in December of 65. These are all by Lee and Kirby. Then, in a very important juncture, we transition from Journey into Mystery to Thor. So Thor takes over the headline, or he had the headline, but it's the name of the book now. Thor 126 in January of 1966. And then finally, the 5th appearance is Tales to Astonish #79 in February of 1966. So he was popular enough to already be jumping from one title to another.
Mm-hmm. But what's he doing in every single title? He's just the big guy for the main character to fight.
Somebody to fight. Somebody to fight and brag and all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like, to me, like the difference between Thor and Hercules is, to me, and this is why I so dislike the MCU Thor so much, is Thor is supposed to be a braggart and not a buffoon.
Yeah.
And you get a little bit more buffoon with Hercules. Though he's the braggart, he's also a braggart and a buffoon, whereas Thor is just a braggart. So, and I'm not a fan of the buffoon style character. So that's why I've never really been a big fan of Hercules. So.
Yeah, it's the same category as Aquaman. I mean, they're both nobility. They're both sons of, they come from a royal line. They're leaders of their realms or whatever, and yet they act just ridiculous. But anyway, we've been down that path before.
Yeah. Well, you're referring to the movie version of Aquaman.
That's what I mean.
Not the comic book version.
Yeah,
okay, just to clarify.
Right.
Just to clarify.
Right. Correct.
So, how much of the of Hercules' origins do you feel like we get in these first 5 issues, Mike?
Really none. I mean, none. I mean, you just, I mean, it's in the very first, which is that, Journey into Mystery annual.
Annual.
It's, basically Thor's, he and Loki are trying to find their way to Olympus for some reason, but then they actually accidentally get there.
Well, they were looking for was it storm giants or frost giants? They were looking for giants
Frost
to fight,
giants, yeah.
who were trying to break into Olympus.
Okay,
and they
yeah.
basically, so they were there to fight the giants, and then Thor ends up in
Okay.
Olympus.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's basically a 15-page fight is what it is.
Yes.
And even for its time, it's like, I think you and I talked about this before a couple days ago. It's like almost like maybe some fans said, "Hey, what would happen if Thor fought Hercules if they rode in?" And this was like Stan Lee's way of saying, "Well, here you go, let's find out."
Yeah, there you go.
So yeah,
it was almost like an imaginary story for Marvel at the
Yeah.
time, because it's even that issue in the blurb kind of phrases it. Well, I don't think they said what if, but imagine if, or I guess I could look it up instead of just sitting here speculating about what they actually said. But it almost made it sound like it wasn't actually. People would argue it's not part of continuity.
Yeah,
know?
I mean,
because,
but it's really it's a great cover too. I mean, it's a Kirby cover
Yes.
with, of course, there were 5 stories, 4 additional stories to this one. They were basically reprints, but this one was the original story, and it was one of them like boxes on the covers.
Yes.
Yeah.
So here it is. Month after month, we have received an avalanche of mail demanding that we pit the mightiest immortals
go.
of all time in hand-to-hand combat, though neither history nor legend records such a battle. If ever the son of Odin had fought the son of Zeus, the matchless imaginations of Lee and Kirby visualize a battle to stagger the senses and dazzle the eyes, a battle which might have been fought, then swept away in the whirlpool of time, a battle such as this, when titans clash, Thor versus Hercules. So again, it's made out to be, if this had happened, this is maybe what would have happened. So, but it does get added in to be officially part of continuity later.
Oh, quickly! I think he was a big fan.
Yeah.
They really enjoyed it. You asked about. I mean, our question is the origin.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do go back to the actual Greek or Roman mythology, it basically is that he's a demigod, which means he's half god and half
human.
mortal, and he's the son of Zeus and a mortal woman named Alcmene. It's all Greek to me. And he basically Zeus essentially raped her, and by disguising himself as her husband, and typical of those times, a lot of those shenanigans, and so none of that was touched on, or even a variation of it was touched on in any of these 5 issues.
Probably for the best.
Probably for the best, yes. Yeah. I wonder though
But
later on if they did.
I don't ever recall that as a story plot, but I haven't sought out a whole lot of Hercules.
Yeah.
But to me, for the most part, you don't really need an origin for this character, because anybody who's read Greek mythology knows this character.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like they really have to be told, I mean, Zeus is there. We kind of get the thing where the Greek gods have kind of stepped away from Earth, and then now it's like they're coming back. Is I can't remember if that was in the first issue or if that probably was in Thor 124, where it kind of hints that the Greek gods were checking in on Earth for the first time in a long time.
Yeah.
So I don't really feel like you needed an origin, because we kind of knew it from Greek mythology.
Sure. And nothing's really changed. I mean, that's the second part of our question, really. Or were you getting ready to ask that? I don't know. But is there anything
forgotten, changed? Yeah, retconned. So, he's a pretty straightforward character.
Yeah.
Now, there was a series that was just titled Hercules, where he actually lost his powers.
Oh.
So he was just a mortal. I didn't actually read it, but it's out there.
Yeah, I've not read past those, early 2000s Avengers books, and he was pretty much the same there. With
anytime I've read him, he's basically been pretty comparable to this character. So or this version of the character, not a whole lot of changes.
Right.
So
right.
And then speaking of origin and powers, what strength? Pretty much invulnerable.
Yep.
What other power set does he have?
Well, they say with the tick, he has nigh invulnerability.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whatever's convenient for the story
Yeah.
is how invulnerable he happens to be.
Apparently, he's not quite. He's more invulnerable than Namor, because Namor got shot and he actually was wounded, whereas Hercules was shot at and he was like, "What is this? Fleas?
Who dares attack me?"
Yeah. Yeah, but you're right. It's just that basic strength, durability, invulnerability, whatever. But his weakness is, what would you say?
Women. Booze.
Yeah, I would say, all that. Yeah, I was thinking anger and rage or whatever, but I hadn't thought about the women and booze. Yeah, that too.
I don't really think he ever was like super angry in any of these. I just think he just, the fact of that, he'll fight for the challenge, is how he ends up getting himself in trouble more than anything else. So, yeah. So I guess that basically answers our fifth question, which is how closely does this version of Hercules match what we see in comics today?
Yeah.
And of course, I'm trying to remember the last time I read a story that had Hercules in it. It's been a little while, but I see him for the most part staying fairly true to what we see here.
I have 3 words, pretty spot on.
Yep.
And maybe we'll see how that translates into the theaters.
If it ever happens.
If it happens, yeah.
I mean, if it ever happens beyond the little cameo appearance that we
after
had
Love
at the
and
end of
Thunder.
Yeah. Such a bad movie. So.
Well, at least the. I did enjoy that whatever that credit, post movie credit.
Yeah, post extra credit, during credit scene. Yeah. So, Mike, what are some of the moments in the first 5 issues that you would like to call special attention to, if anything?
This is my favorite part because I like, as I'm going through it, I'm just pointing out things, noticing things. I mean, first of all, the art in all of them was, fantastic. You got Kirby doing pencils on the first 4 appearances with Vince Colletta inks, and then you got, on that last appearance in Tales to Astonish, you got Kirby layouts with Bill Everett inks, I believe. Yeah, but it was so good. It's just very Silver Agey, and that's a good thing in my book. That first one, which seems like fan service at a very early stage, where Hercules and Thor are fighting, and neither really win because Zeus calls the fight a draw and sends Thor home. So it was really good. The second issue had there was a 3-issue arc with these 2 Journey into Mysteries and then Thor. It was all one big arc. And you had Thor and Hercules vying for the attention of Jane Foster.
That was the one thing that I wanted to point out. Is it's amazing how many of these stories, we know that there's the romance comic genre, but it's how much of that is still in the Marvel comics of the time. Because I remember whenever I went back and I reread Captain America from 100 on to the end of that first volume, and it was just constant Steve. Sharon, how can we date whenever you're working for S.H.I.E.L.D. and you're putting yourself in danger and da-da-da-da-da. And it was just constant through that. It's oh my goodness, this is just too much of a romance
Same
comic.
at DC with Lois Lane and Superman. They made a whole Lois Lane's whole book for a long time was just that.
But that wasn't in the. There probably was some of that in the Superman title.
Oh yeah, that was that too. Yeah.
But this was the main Captain America title that this was going on in. So, what else you want to point out?
So Journey into Mystery 124, the second appearance. It's like I said, the first of the 3-issue arc. I for the first time I seen, I think, as far as the earliest appearance of Thor flying with the hammer pulling him that we all are familiar with, and it was a
Yeah.
full page splash, and it just was awesome. Um, and I had to make note that Kirby, they had this character, the antagonist in that issue was a someone called the Demon, who was basically a witch doctor that got a hold of one of the Asgardian Norn stones,
Norn
giving him
stones,
power. But of course, Kirby goes on to create Etrigan, the demon. So makes you wonder if he was thinking, how can I make this demon different than that demon?
That demon, right? Well, apparently, prior to this, Kirby had another Thor character.
Oh yeah,
By the way,
yeah.
I'd have to look up the details on it, but that's not about Hercules, so
Yeah.
we won't keep talking about that.
Kirby was an idea factory, just like Lee.
Oh, big time,
Yeah.
big time.
In Journey into Mystery 125, it was like more of the same, basically. I think Hercules was even more arrogant in this issue. I can't remember if the introduction of JB Stardust was in this issue or the previous one, but he's the Hollywood agent
Oh,
that
yes.
is really was pursuing Hercules to get him to portray himself
Health. Mm-hmm.
in a movie. And I love some of the lines with that. Odin Odin is a very sensitive, unpredictable guy. He's really ticked off that Thor revealed his identity, or I should say, Dr. Don Blake revealed his alter ego to Jane as Thor. So, that most of this issue, or a big part of it, was Odin telling all the rest of the Asgard minions to kick Thor's butt for that. And I don't know.
Was it the Trial of Steel? What was it called?
Something
of
along those
steel.
lines. Yeah. I mean, of course, Thor wins, or at least he gets away, and Balder has to, prostrate himself in front of Odin for not defeating him. But I think my very favorite scene, though, was when Thor came back to Earth and he walks into this diner where Hercules and Jane are enjoying a soda, and it's just such a contradiction of you just wouldn't picture seeing Hercules with a woman at a diner and then Thor being, what the heck is going on here, except thee and thous all abound.
Yes. I remember the scene relating to that Trial of Steel or whatever it's called, where Thor's about ready to escape. He's at the Rainbow Bridge. He has to go up against Heimdall, and he's blocking the sword with the hammer hilt. Right, and it's just like, that sword is inches from your fingers.
Yeah.
It's like, an inch this way, and you've lost all your fingers.
Right.
I don't think that's the way that you should be.
Probably not the
blocking
best
that.
of defensive weapons, at
No,
least to a sword.
no.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, okay, can you imagine having been the young comic book reader at this time?
No.
All right,
Yeah.
where comic book distribution is not what it, even with everything going on with Diamond, is not what it is now.
No.
Right? You don't have eBay to track down back issues.
Right.
And you're going to a grocery store or whatever, and you happen to pick up, let's say even, Journey into Mystery 124.
Yeah.
All right, where you get to the end and it's like, where's the rest of my story? I've got to wait another month and try to find Journey into Mystery 125. And it's like, did my grocery store get it? Oh, okay. And then to have the knowledge to like, the next month, where's Journey into Mystery 126? I see Thor 126,
Right.
but I don't see Journey into Mystery 126, which I need for my Hercules story. I can't even imagine.
There wasn't. There wasn't anything. I don't have the physical copies, of course, but
No.
I imagine there wasn't any kind of a house ad at the back of the book saying, "Hey, don't look for Journey into Mystery. Look for Thor."
Look for Thor. Yeah, we're changing the. I don't know. I guess I should check that, but yeah, there wasn't anything because we don't have the ads in the unlimited.
I'm assuming
app,
you
so.
don't have any of these issues, do you? Or do you have the annual?
I do not. I don't even have the Journey into Mystery annual one. No, so I have owned it in the past, but it was
Mm-hmm.
not. Again, I'm not a Hercules fan,
Mm-hmm.
so it's not like this is a key that has any particular meaning to me. So it's like, yeah, I sell it, when I get
Yeah.
it. So,
So
but I think I've only ever owned it once or twice. I haven't owned it very many copies of it.
yeah.
So,
Well, the in that same issue was the second favorite quote for me after the Zesty Zither of Zeus was right after Thor catches those two at the diner. He says, "Verily, it is beyond belief." And now I also want to say that when something upsets me. Verily, it is beyond belief.
yeah, and I can't tell if he just has Hercules just has a really thin mustache, or if he just doesn't grow facial hair very well.
Oh yeah. I don't know. Yeah, could be. I mean,
Coming from somebody who also doesn't grow facial hair very well.
well, that's you don't really know that until someone tries to grow a beard. Whether they can. Yeah, and in Thor 126, again, this one was a really great cover. I liked how it had a big image of Hercules with his mace standing over another image of. Oh wait, I don't have that picture in front of me. I'm sorry. I'm looking at the 124. So either way, it's the two. Yeah, they are basically grappling, and you see both Mjolnir and the mace, which I guess the mace doesn't have a name, but yeah, that was a great cover.
And Jane in the background,
Yeah, with Jane in the
lamenting
background. Yeah,
her two men fighting it out
yeah.
over her.
And some of the good scenes. One of the great scenes in there is on page 4. You got Hercules. And they're in the middle of their fight, and Hercules smashing a semi tractor trailer from the front with Thor on the back, and just squishing it. And of course, the still ticked off Odin decides he's going to weaken Thor, and it makes it easier. Basically, allows for Hercules to defeat him, and Thor doesn't know it. He doesn't know that he got weakened by his dad, and so he's so upset. He's like, Jane's wanting going, I really don't love you, Thor. I don't love Hercules. I love you, Thor. And he goes, no, I'm not worthy of you, and I'll come back when I've regained my honor. So that is such great drama.
It's great something. I don't know that.
It's great corny '60s drama.
There you go.
Yeah. And then my last.
Well, and I think he did. Well, he did realize, because he even says, once before the wrath of Odin caused half my power to be shorn from my limbs. Am I now being punished so again?
Oh, so he questioned it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then this is the part I liked about that, though, is he got the little asterisk point to the little footnote from the editor. As seen low these many months ago, but only Odin remembers when. Embarrassed Stan. So he didn't actually reference the issue number. Yeah, so
he didn't have anybody available to go look it up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then in a kind of a distinct turn of style, I guess you'd say, is that fifth appearance is in Tales to Astonish number 79 from February of '66, and of course, and Scott, you have to tell me, was this always a title that had one story, one Submariner story, and one Hulk story, or did it jump around?
Well, at this point, it was switching between, or it included Submariner and Hulk stories. Let's see, I got to remember. I think there's Tales to Astonish, and yeah. So this earlier was Giant Man, and which was oh gosh, Henry Pym,
Hank Pym,
and and something else. So it's always been a twofer.
Okay.
And this was during that time period where Marvel was using like DC distribution.
Oh, right.
So they were limited to the number of books. So to get more characters out, they had all of the Tales to Astonish, Tales of Suspense, books that they would split to have Strange Tales, to have multiple characters each month.
Yeah.
So they only could have like 8 or so books.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why we have that. But yeah, at this point, it was Submariner Hulk for quite a while.
Yeah.
I mean, several years at least.
So the Submariner story, which I read because I'm doing my due diligence, I didn't want to find out that, Hercules had an appearance in the last few pages of it. But the first story was by Lee and this guy named Adam Austin. And I'm thinking, who in the world is Adam Austin? Turns out that's a pseudonym for Gene Colan.
Mm-hmm.
Inks by Bill Everett. And the Hulk story was by Lee and Kirby with layouts. Kirby doing the layouts and Bill Everett doing the inks. And it's definitely got a visually different look to it. It's almost as if Kirby was like, well, I'm going to keep it simple for Bill and just put most of the pages in 6-panel grids. Some were in 9, but and it's basically Hercules and JB Stardust, that Hollywood promoter. They're headed to Hollywood by train, and there's Hulk's trying to get away from the army like he is in about every third story, and he tears up the railroad tracks in the process somehow, and so Hercules comes to the rescue and fights Hulk in the obligatory way. And one thing I noticed, we were talking about Jane Foster with Thor. You've also got in this one the tearful woman being Betty Ross, pining for Bruce. Yeah. He's never. Am I ever going to get him?
Because Major Talbot had a thing for Betty. So he's trying to do all this to impress her.
Yeah.
But she's just pining for Bruce. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a good issue too, in a different way.
Yeah.
That's all my comments. I enjoyed the heck out of those.
Okay, well, good. I kind of felt they were all sort of so-so.
That's it.
I guess I'm a fan of a slightly more mature storytelling myself. So
if this is all we did was read 60s comics, yeah, I'd be that way too. But you and I, whether it's for the show or just our own reading pleasure, we read a lot of modern stuff.
Yes. Yeah. So, all right. So the big question is, do you plan to seek out more stories with Hercules in them?
I mean, seek out is a strong word.
Yes.
A strong phrase. Probably not. But if and when it comes up, I'm not going to run away from it. I enjoy Thor, or Hercules is a sort of a more than a supporting character, but less than like a top tier hero, I guess. But I'd like to see, if that movie comes out, the Thor movie comes out, and I'd like to see how closely they follow the apparent equal status of these two major, both mythological and Marvel heroes.
And for me, the simple answer is no. I'm not going to go out of my way to read a Hercules story.
Now, I'm less inclined to buy something brand new with him than I am to say, let's go back, like earlier I was talking to you, and I'm like, I wouldn't mind going back and seeing if there was any reference to his origins, or if there was any recommended reading, maybe hit 4 or 5 stories there.
Well, it's like when he joins the Avengers in, I think, Avengers 38, or he had a couple of 4-issue limited series in the 80s. Bob Layton, I think, wrote those, like not the Power of Hercules. I can't even remember what Prince of Power. It doesn't matter. He had a couple of series there. So, all right. Well, any final thoughts on Hercules before we talk about what we've been reading?
No, but I'm going to look for some bands that play the zither.
There you go. Good luck. When you discover some, don't tell me. I don't want to know.
Okay. All right.
All right. So, Mike, what do you want to talk about first from your reading pile?
Gosh. Well, I'm trying to get better about not only setting aside the books that I read for review or to at least briefly discuss like we do on this What We've Been Reading segment, but I'm also trying to take mental notes or take some, reference. I don't always succeed, so I end up having to, scan through these again. So we're going back, a month probably or more of since the last time, since I've read some of these books. And the first, we're just going to go back and forth, right, Scott?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The first one I got is it's a 3-issue story called Borealis, as in Aurora Borealis. and it's published. It was published by Dark Horse in 2024, written by Mark Verheiden and Aaron Douglas, written by art by Cliff Richards. So a guy I met, a friend of mine that's a podcaster named Professor Alan Middleton. He has a podcast called the Quarterbin Podcast where he reviews books that obviously cost a quarter and basically says, was it worth it? Was it overvalued, undervalued, whatever? And when I met him, when I went to Columbus, Ohio the last time, he gave me this little 3-issue series. So it's a nice, concise 3-issue series. It's basically the story is set in an Alaskan town called Quinu. The protagonist is an Alaskan state trooper named Silaluk Sil Osha. She's Inuit descent, and she is sent from the state police to go investigate some murders of local mobsters in her former hometown. And it's been overrun by organized crime while she was away. You don't really even, it's not something you picture in Alaska anyway, that there's a bunch of organized crime, but they really are heavy with this in this story. But there's a lot more going on than just it's not just a crime story, it's supernatural as well. And while she's working to solve the crime, she kind of finds out that she's inherited some powers that she didn't know it at the time, but like 13 years earlier, she had some addiction problems that were derived from her visions from these powers. And these powers are like I said, supernatural. They turn her eyes green. They give her visions. They allow her to see things that other people don't see, and they also give her control of these borealis spirits that can do everything from, well, let's just say the worst case scenario, they can just rip the heck out of stuff. She kind of really is the most powerful when she hulks out. It turns out she got those powers from her white father, who had raped her mother. And when she goes into this town, she teams up with a town cop who was her old flame, and also the son of the chief of police. And anyway, it's without getting too entangled into the plot, it all culminates when the mobsters decide to deal with Syl and her powers, and they have this big shootout that is sort of prefaced at the very first issue, but it comes back to that in the last issue. The shootout is at one of the mob's hideouts, where she finds out that the chief of police is also in cahoots with the mob. She all of a sudden remembers this repressed memory that the chief had allowed the mob boss and another of his gangsters rape her years ago when she was stoned and in the jail, because she had these abuse problems. The art's top notch. I hadn't really heard of this artist necessarily, but I thought it was perfect for this kind of a story. It's there were a couple of plot holes that, because I have a little background in law enforcement, so there were some procedural things that I'm like, I don't know if that's the way I think that would go, but it's Alaska, who knows? And then there's a big cliffhanger at the end involving her father, her biological father, who apparently is still out there, and you can tell this story was meant to be just a taste of a larger story. So Borealis.
And that title again?
Sorry?
Title again?
Yeah, Borealis, yeah. And thanks to Professor Allen for giving it to me. I enjoyed it. It was, in his terms, very much worth a quarter each.
All right, so my first one is a OGN, original graphic novel, Heretic. This was written by, I'm trying to read it backwards, Robbie Morrison. Art by Charlie Adler.
Oh, I know Charlie. Yeah.
What's that?
I know of Charlie, yeah.
Yeah. So he's probably best known for his extended run on The Walking Dead as an artist, but he's done a couple other things as well. And I'm going to just kind of read the back cover of this. Actually, so for those of you who are listening, we talked about this before, but Mike and I are trying to, in 2025, hit at least 500 comic books that we're reading. So we're both well over 100. And I almost regretted reading this because this is a 124-page story, and I only got credit for reading one comic book after having read this 124-page OGN. So I feel like I've been cheated. So maybe we should be going by page count instead of issue numbers, but that's neither here nor there. So this is set in Belgium, 1529. The city of Antwerp is ravaged by a macabre series of killings. The all-powerful Inquisition forces knight, doctor, lawyer, and reputed black magician Cornelius Agrippa to investigate. As the killings escalate, Agrippa, his daughter Juliet, and pupil Johann Weyer are plunged into a maelstrom of murder, madness, and magic. So this is a historical fiction. Apparently, this was just a quick internet search. The main character here, Cornelius Agrippa, was actually apparently somebody who existed, and I've lost my tab that I thought I had open for that individual. Yeah, okay, so it's gone, but it's not that important. So again, it's loosely based on some something that are characters that actually are individuals that actually existed.
Yeah, I'm looking.
I mean, it's Go ahead.
I see. I just see Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa and witchcraft reappraisal. So yeah, definitely a historic figure, a German scholar that lived between 1486 and 1535.
Right, which is right in the time frame that this story is supposed to take place.
Yeah.
But it even starts with Sigmund Freud being asked about some of the most significant books ever published, and he points to Johann Weyer's book, who was the pupil of Agrippa, who was writing about the events that take place in this story. Mm-hmm. So this is set in we'll just call it the Dark Ages. And it's a supernatural story, but it also takes into account science at the time, the religion, the bad religion of the time. This is just the Inquisition, not the Spanish Inquisition, but it wasn't much better. Mm-hmm. So if you are interested in, I guess, historical fiction, the occult, supernatural, it's not clear, and I think it's deliberately not clear, how much of this is real, the supernatural events, how much are real, how much are imagined, or even potentially embellished by the author of the biography that is being referenced there at the very beginning. But the Charlie Adler art, again, if you've read any Walking Dead after issue 6, so I think it was Tony Moore until 6, and then Adler takes over. It might have been a little later than 6, but I don't remember exactly. So the Adler art is great. Now the Robbie Morrison. I'm not familiar with him, but looking at his credits, there is apparently a character, Nikolai Dante, from 2000 AD.
Oh.
That he had serialized over 15 years. So,
wow.
So, yeah, he has scripted iconic characters such as Batman, Doctor Who, and Judge Dredd. So that's probably more the 2000 AD stuff.
Yeah.
So again, it's good for the historical fiction supernatural reader. Probably anybody beyond that, I wouldn't recommend it. And again, it definitely portrays religion in a negative light, and based on the times, deservedly so, with events that were going on in the world at that time. So, Heretic by Robbie Morrison, Charlie Adler from Image Comics. I think this was published in 2024. Let me double check that.
I like historical fiction. I wouldn't mind maybe trading it for you, or or borrow it from you or something.
Okay, we can probably make that happen.
Okay.
Back to you.
All right. So Jenny Sparks, I wasn't sure if I wanted to cover this one or not because I've only gotten in 6 issues of a 7-issue series, but it's pretty decompressed writing. It's by Tom King and Jeff Spokes on the art. Started coming out in 2024. And so Jenny Sparks is of the back in the day of Garth Ennis and whoever did the art back then, I'm not sure. The Authority, the Stormwatch, and all that. She is described as the spirit of the 20th century, having been born at its very beginning. We're talking about January 1st of 1990, and then dying at its end, and we're talking about December 31st, 1999. And throughout her time, she is shown to have she's influenced some of the most significant people who shaped the world and the century, both for good and for bad. She's depicted as she's very superficial, hedonistic type of person, very strong underlying sense of morality, uh, and she first appeared in Stormwatch Volume 2, number 37 from 1996. 1996. It was Tom Rainey, by the way, who did the art. Another really good artist. So this version of Jenny Sparks that Tom King is writing is the same version, except she was resurrected because there was like a spirit of the 21st century named Jenny Quantum. But, you know, I don't know, that's a whole other thing. So Jenny Sparks came back at 9/11, according to this story, and she is still age 19. That's her age froze at that point. She's got these powers of electrical manipulation. She doesn't have her own like electro or black lightning electrical power. She has to pull it from somewhere else. And you know, like I said, she uses her power, she uses her personality to influence the events of the century. So anyway, when DC revived Sparks as this Black Label in this Black Label miniseries, Tom King, kind of his typical fashion, he turns one of our other heroes, into something else, not necessarily a hero. So, again, spoilers. I know we don't always say it out loud, but just so you know, folks, there will be spoilers in here. Captain Atom in this story goes rogue. And of course it is outside of continuity. It's Black Label, but he's threatening to destroy the planet. He's like mentally disturbed, and his powers have increased to like Dr. Manhattan level, who, by the way, was inspired by Captain Atom, with Alan Moore writing The Watchmen. But he thinks he's got the ability to just do. It's almost like he can snap his fingers and anything happens. Some of the events: he kills a homeless man in a park. He takes 4 random people hostage in a bar, and basically most of the stories of these issues, or most of the issues, are the conversations that Jenny is having. There's a few flashbacks, but it's mostly the hostages, Captain Atom. They're all having these conversations in this bar. Yes, that's it. The whole plot. But it's great writing, so you like it for the writing. You're like, man, it's and again, I get that vibe of like Mr. Miracle from Tom King. Like, this isn't what or when when Wally West died in Heroes in Crisis and things. I get a little antsy reading it, but the quality's great. Jeff Spokes, his art's fantastic. It's just you have to remember that it's outside of continuity. And like I said, there's still another issue coming out. Maybe maybe I'll be vindicated, or I'll be happy by the end of it. But who knows? That's it. Back to you.
All right. Well, I'm going to have a quick one here.
All right.
And I'm primarily talking about this just because I have a lot of these series in my I've read it pile, and I want to get it out from underneath my feet. So I've read Blade Runner 2019, the 12-issue series, Blade Runner Origins, the 12-issue series, Blade Runner 2029, that 12-issue series. I'm about halfway through Blade Runner 2039. I still have yet to read, there's a Tokyo Nexus, I think, Blade Runner, which I'm going to wrap all that up. But this is all from Titan. The main story, it's set, 2019, 2029, 2039. It follows a Blade Runner who goes by the name of Ash, and just basically how she becomes sympathetic to the replicant cause. Even takes a replicant lover in the series. So I, again, simply put, if you are a fan of the Blade Runner universe, because there's not a lot of Blade Runner out there besides the two movies, then this is something that you should look into. It stays relatively true, I think, to the spirit of the movies, though. One of the series kind of I don't care for how they make the jump for the replicants to kind of become more self-aware and want their independence. It's almost like one of the replicants gains a magical power.
Oh.
So it was just like, oh, they could put a little spark into all the other replicants, and that's what causes the replicant revolt that starts all the need for the Blade Runners. That was in the Origin series, I think. A lot of it's run together because of there's just been so much Blade Runner that I have been reading. But if you are a fan of Blade Runner, then it's definitely worth picking up this series just to get a little bit more. If you are indifferent about Blade Runner or not a big fan of Blade Runner, I would skip it. Just because you're not going to get, there's nothing that it's going to add to your, quality reading, just because of the fact that you're not interested in the initial, background material that the universe that this comes from. The writing is good, the artwork is good. So I don't think anybody would be disappointed. But again, if you're just not a Blade Runner fan, then there's not really any point to picking this up. But I am a Blade Runner fan, so I like to sit down and watch, the original, and actually I've read the Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep 2 or 3 times. So definitely a fan of the material. Though I do think the movie, it's one of those cases where the movie is better than the book.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
unusual.
it's totally. Well, I shouldn't say it's totally different. It's very different. So the book and the movie are they're quite different. I always feel like so.
Okay.
So there you go. Blade Runner, pick it up if you're a fan of the movies. Ignore it if you're not a fan of the movies.
Okay. Minor Arcana. That might sound familiar to some of the listeners. We covered issue 1 in episode 197, and that was the three of us, Scott and Shad and I. And I decided, for once, I'm going to stick to my plan and continue reading a book that we covered the first issue of. So I did read issues, well, I reread 1, and then I read issues 2 through 5 by Jeff Lemire. This came out in 2024, and it continues to come out as an ongoing. It's by Boom Studios. And basically everything I liked about the first issue got even better. The protagonist is Teresa. She moves back home to, what was it, Lumberlost or something like that, a Canadian town, and it's everything she didn't want to go back to, but she's forging ahead. The issue 2 kind of leaves off, or picks up exactly where issue 1 left off. If you remember, Scott, that there was, she was doing a tarot card reading for her mom was sleeping or passed out or whatever, and so a woman came by frantically wanting to get her cards read because she needed to, for some reason. I forgot what it was, but she starts reading them, and it's for this Jean Tremblay, and as she's reading the cards, Teresa goes into a trance. And it's basically she's dreaming, but it's more than that. She's exploring this hotel on a beach. It's very otherworldly, and it really, to me, felt like Stephen King's Dark Tower. Some of the worlds that you step in a door and you go to another world. That was kind of a big theme there, and it even made me think of that quote from Jake in The Gunslinger of "Go then, there are other worlds than these." Anybody that's read The Gunslinger will be like, yes, I know that quote. And anyway, again, spoilers. As Teresa wanders the halls of this hotel, she finds a door that leads to a campground or a campsite where a young man asks he's there and he's asking what she's doing there, and it turns out that he is Jean's dead husband, Jean with a G, and it's kind of a touching scene, but he's explaining to her what that area, that realm is. It's kind of an in-between place. He's waiting for his wife, Jean, to pass away because he died at a very young age, decades before, and she's old now, but he's waiting there at this sort of purgatory location, and he tells Teresa, make sure you tell her that I'll be waiting for her and I won't cross over without her. Because Teresa had to leave quickly. They were hearing like strange noises, and he's like, "You're not supposed to be here. You need to get out." So when she comes to, or she's back in the real world, she's kind of freaked out, and she takes it out on poor Jean and her mom and Teresa's mom, and even Teresa starts drinking again. If you remember the first issue, she was on the wagon for a while now, but she goes to that tavern, and then while she's under the influence, she goes to her ex-girlfriend's house because she wants to talk. It's been 4 years, and of course, her ex is Melissa, and she's married and got a kid, and her husband Brad is pretty understanding. He even gives Teresa a ride home, but he does tell her as he drops her off, "Look, don't come back here. Teresa or Melissa is finally happy." Teresa does build her relationship with that waitress Kelly, who was a former classmate, and that kind of leads to the next vision where she's testing her new powers with Kelly's encouragement by reading Kelly's cards, and that leads to a vision of this really crazy scene where this puppet from Kelly's turns out Kelly's dead grandfather ran a kids show in that town, and had puppets and stuff, and there was a puppet of this little dog and a puppet of her little brother, but she hasn't seen that brother in 4 years. So the interaction of that, or that in that vision, it makes Kelly think that the brother's out there somewhere and that she can find him. So, and that really kind of wraps up in that last issue, issue 5, with a homeless man that says you see him throughout the story popping up, but he says, "Hey, look, you need to see the Empress before going any further." And it's a kind of a little teaser. So I am enjoying the heck out of this. It might be the best thing I've read by Jeff Lemire to date. It's better than Sweet Tooth. It's better than a lot of things, Fish Flies, whatever, the DC stuff he's done. It's really good. So I highly recommend it.
All right, so my next book is Doctor Doom and Rocket Raccoon. So this is this J. Michael Straczynski series of one-shots that he is writing now that he has left Captain America. So I think the first 2 are out. I don't know, maybe the third one's out. I can't remember. But in this one, Doctor Doom needs some help with his time machine because he wants to go back. I guess he has some limitations on how far in time he can travel. So he needs somebody who can work with, electronics. So who does he call? One Rocket Raccoon, who kind of has this innate ability to work with electronics. And ultimately, Doom wants to answer the question, why? So you even kind of get this little Abbott and Costello back and forth between Doom and Rocket at one point because of, Doom saying why, and then he's saying I answered the question, and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. But he wants to go back to basically not the beginning of the universe. He wants to go back to the moment before the beginning of the universe. So it's referred to as entropy -1 in the story. So we're kind of reintroduced to Doom's history. There's some really, really nice back and forth between Doom and Rocket in this series. The artwork is really, really good, though Rocket is drawn a little more cartoony in this than he would typically be drawn in other books, but Doom looks really, really good. Um, but it's a good read. It's self-contained. It's not going to have any impact on anything else that happens in the Marvel universe. I think that's going to be the case for all of these books. I think it's just, again, they're letting J. Michael Straczynski play in the Marvel universe, and he's going to just mix two characters together. I think we have like Captain America and Volstagg coming up. Gosh, I can't remember what the other one is. We talked about him in the pre-orders issues. So if you are even remotely a fan of JMS, or a fan of Doom, or a fan of Rocket, or if you are a fan of J. Michael Straczynski's run on Brave and the Bold, where we had, characters like Brother Power the Geek and just some oddball characters that kind of popped up in that series. I think it was wasn't there like an Aquaman and Etrigan?
Oh yeah, there was the Atom
there was
and
some,
the Joker. I mean,
yeah, there was some great team ups in that Brave and the Bold.
Yeah.
So this does kind of feel like that, and it's hitting the mark with me. A lot of times I don't care a lot for the one shots that really don't have any bearing, but I guess because I know going into it that that's going to be the case, I can just kind of enjoy the story. And I think he plays pretty loose with the historical beginning of the Marvel 616 universe, comic book universe. I think he's, it's not quite, doesn't quite line up correctly, but it's a pretty good story. So, Doctor Doom and Rocket Raccoon. Oh, the art is Will Robson, not Robinson. Will Robson, and it's like I said, it's really, really solid, especially the Doom stuff is really, really good. So I would recommend this, and probably I think it's gonna be safe to say that entire JMS Marvel one-shot series is probably going to be pretty good.
Yeah, they'll probably collect it somewhere.
I would say almost certainly they will collect it.
And I mean, I'm glad you said it's not connected to anything ongoing in Marvel, because they do have that big Doom event going on right now.
Yes, which I have not read any of.
Yeah. I might be interested. I just got through, I don't know if I told you or not, but I read Emperor Doom for the first time, that 1980s Marvel graphic novel. With Bob Hall art. Who did the writing? I forgot.
I don't remember. So
was it like Grunwald or one of those?
Let me look it
anyway,
up.
It was. I wasn't planning on talking about it here, but I did enjoy. I really would like to go through some of those graphic novels, both Marvel and DC from the 80s. They kind of like predated all of the. They were bigger size than the trades that you get for a graphic novel now. They were, taller and wider, more magazine.
That's where we got the
size,
first New Mutants was in that series, So it was. Now there are 3 writer credits on that. Dave Michelinie.
Oh, it was
Bob
Michelinie.
Hall.
Yeah.
But it lists here Mark Grunwald and Jim Shooter. Now Jim Shooter is probably just because he was editor in chief at the time.
I think they came up with the concept.
Yeah.
Of it.
But on the cover, it's David Michelinie and Bob Hall.
Yeah, if I remember reading the foreword, I think it was the Shooter and Grunwald came up with the concept, but then the script and the plot and everything, the actual story was written by Michelinie. So, okay, I got my next one is Plastic Man No More. And I didn't start picking this up at first. I thought, I don't know, I can do without Plastic Man. He's not my favorite.
He's no elongated man.
He's no elongated man, exactly. You know me too well. But I started hearing some good things about it. It's a 4-issue miniseries, also a DC Black Label, mostly out in 2024, but dipped into 2025, written by Christopher Cantwell. So he's got good cred. And art by Alex Linz and Jacob Edgar. I don't know them, but let me tell you, they were right for this story. It's not your typical Plastic Man story. Eel O'Brien, his alter ego, he has this, suffers some sort of, it's basically just being Plastic Man. Eventually it's catching up to him. He's got cellular damage. It's going to kill him. But before he dies, it's a story about him trying to make amends for his past mistakes, which there are many, because if you remember, he started out as a crook. And he's had this son, that came about in the last 20 years, where he's had a son, and he wasn't the best dad, so he's trying to make amends mostly with him. Very body horror type stuff. I mean, you can imagine with Plastic Man. I mean, there are scenes with him in buckets, parts of him falling off because he's just basically decomposing. It's it is easy to feel sorry for him, especially there are some scenes with the Justice League where they're brushing him off and treating him like the class clown and just, oh, that's just Plaz, even though he's got serious things to tell them. And it reminded me very much of Blue Beetle in the Countdown to Infinite Crisis. If you remember, he had information for all the Leaguers about what was going on with Maxwell Lord, and nobody wanted to really give him the time of day because he was always the jokester in the JLI. So anyway, Plaz has a solution. He figures out that his problem involves he found a molecular biologist, and he needed for the experiment the very first Metal Man, also the nastiest, the radioactive uranium, which honestly I'd never even read a Metal Man story with him. He apparently appeared like early on in the Metal Men stories, but anyway, or maybe even in Showcase. But they needed him and his radioactive nature to make this experiment work. There are a lot of co-stars. You had, of course, Plaz's partner Woozy Winks. You had Detective Chimp. You had Metamorpho. There were a lot of good scenes. It was definitely a black comedy. Very much deeper story than I was expecting. Had a lot of heart. And again, it's Black Label, but there was a lot more death than I would have liked. And again, it's not in continuity, but be forewarned, it's maybe not for everyone because, people live, people die, and nothing will be the same. That's it.
Okay, that's it. Okay. I'm struggling, with what to talk about here, so I'm going to jump to this another hardcover. So this is Billy 99. Now, I did count this as 4 separate issues because it actually is broken up in the hardcover as 4 separate issues. So full disclosure. But this is something that we talked about on one of our pre-orders, and I actually ordered it because it is from Tim Sale. So this is one of his earliest books. It was described as having a bit of a V for Vendetta feel to it, and it's really more, instead of about like a corrupt government and an anarchist, this is really more about, I would say it's more about union versus corporate. And then you have this one industrialist who was a quote unquote, I was gonna say superhero, but it's probably more accurate to say vigilante, who gets killed because he gets older and heavier, and he's not as fast as he once was, so he dies. So his daughter kind of takes on the mantle, and now I realized that I was reading this as the name was Toledo, but I just noticed as I was flipping through, because I was like, I don't remember exactly what the vigilante's name was, but it's actually Toleado. So I don't know if it actually is Toledo or Toleado or something else. I did a real quick search online for Toleado, thinking it was probably had some special meaning, but the internet only talks about Toledo, Ohio. So so that didn't help me any at all. But I guess the premise of the story is corporations have kind of taken over, and there's this one particular corporation that was owned by our protagonist's father, who was the former, I'm going to keep saying Toledo because that's what I said it as whenever I was reading it, where they maintained 51% ownership, they had 11% ownership, and the union had 40% ownership. So this is a really big corporate raider is like the backdrop for this story. And when the father dies, well, the father insists to the daughter that you do not tell them that I was Toledo. So Unfortunately, this makes it look like the daughter killed the father. So she has to be on the run.
Mm-hmm.
And while all this is happening, since she represents that 11% ownership that keeps the corporation, the corporate raider, from moving in and buying out the union shares of the, it's probably more corporate intrigue than what most people would care about. While it keeps that percentage is just enough that if this corporate raider can convince the union to sell out all their shares, then he can take over the company.
Okay.
So it's really just kind of this story from Tim Sale. It's meant to feel a little bit like V for Vendetta, and it does have a V for Vendetta feel to it just a little bit. Instead of having like the anarchy sign, you got this T sign, where Toledo has been, and so it kind of has that little bit of a feel for it, but it's only actually 4 issues. I think they are oversized issues, but I mean you've got hundreds of pages of Tim Sale story and art here inside of Billy 99. So it's nice to have that as a self-contained story. And this is one of the earlier things that Tim Sale did, and there's even a little like some recounting of some stories and discussions that Tim Sale had before he passed. And like I'm just going to read this little excerpt. This is from Susan Bailey, who I think was Tim Sale's significant other. A couple of years ago, I asked him if he had the opportunity to redraw any book he'd worked on in the past, which one would it be? Without pausing, he said, Billy 99. When I asked why, he replied, I just have more fun doing it again. I hadn't quite mastered the side-eye, and of course, I would ink wash a lot of it. I would have loved to have seen what Billy Chatham, who was the protagonist, would have looked like had he had the opportunity. Thank you for taking the leap of faith, Sarah. And then Susan. So anyway, if you're a Tim Sale fan, if you're a V for Vendetta fan, if for some reason the corporate raider aspect of this is of interest to you, then you should definitely check out Billy 99. But I think the Tim Sale portion should be enough to get any comic book fan interested in this. Yeah.
Very cool. What year did it come out?
Oh, that's a good question. So I do not know the answer to that question. Let's see if it says anything. I'm assuming it was pre-1999.
Yeah, when you said it was pre, one of his first works, I just...
Oh, it doesn't. I'm looking at the copyrights, and it doesn't say...
Is that right? Oh, okay.
It doesn't say. It just has 2024 copyrights because of when this hardcover was released.
Okay.
So I tell you what, you go on to your next one, and I will find out when Billy 99 came out.
Okay. Well, my last review, or what I've been reading, is a series by Stephanie Phillips and Gran Suzuka from Boom Studios called Red Before Black. Now, Stephanie Phillips is one of my favorite writers of the modern age. I've really enjoyed her work. And Suzuka, if I'm not mistaken, I know him from doing some stuff on Why the Last Man. I'm almost sure. But anyway, the title, Red Before Black, comes from an old rhyme regarding the highly venomous coral snake. And the rhyme goes, red before black, okay, Jack. Red before yellow kills a fellow. So that's to give the distinction between a venomous coral snake and other similar snakes. So this idea of red before black, or this whole one's bad, one's good, or one's meaner than the other, definitely applies to the two lead characters, Val and Leo. Both female characters. Val's a former soldier who just got out of prison, and she got out because the FBI wanted her to infiltrate a drug operation. This FBI agent named Charles Lamb recruited her and got her an early release so that she could get in with her old buddy named Miles. And Val, her first mission working for Miles' drug operation was to kill a woman named Leo. who double-crossed Miles by stealing a bunch of drugs. However, it didn't work out. Val couldn't kill her. They basically team up. They end up becoming, like I'm trying to think of what is that movie where they jump over the Grand Canyon? Thelma and Louise. Yeah.
Thelma and Louise.
Yeah.
Or they try.
Yeah, they don't actually. Yeah, right. So, they're it's basically the first 3 issues I have is basically them making the connection. They kind of team up. They're on the run from both this drug operation and from the FBI because the FBI now knows that she didn't do what she was supposed to do and kind of reneged on her deal. And one of the drug operations enforcers is chasing them down and putting them at risk and stuff. It's a lot of twists and turns, and yeah, I would say it's the best comic duo since Harley and Ivy, but I don't think I've read a single Harley and Ivy book. But anyway, you get the idea. It's a good partner, buddy, cop sort of story. A lot of fun, and it's my 5th book or series of books I've read, and I've liked it as much as any of them.
Okay, so Billy 99 was originally released in 1991.
Oh wow, that is going back some time. Yeah.
So it was reprinted in 2002. So then this was a 2024 reprint. So. All right. Well, I think I'm going to go out on a sour note. I almost changed this just because of the fact that I was like, I don't want to end on a negative review, but I'm going to end on a negative review. So a couple of years ago, I listened to the first volume of Elric of Melniboné by Michael Moorcock. So, if you aren't familiar with Elric, he is a albino elf who has a sword that drains the soul of anyone who it kills, and he's like the king, and he kind of renounces his throne. And there's this whole story. I'm not going to get into the whole thing with Elric, but the first volume I kind of really, really liked quite a bit. And then I went to the second volume, and it felt so incredibly repetitive. And there's a lot of Deus Ex Machina in there where it's just like he randomly, like he's about ready to die, and he randomly thinks of some ancient race of gods that owe his people a favor, and he managed to remember the incantation, and it saves him. And it's just like, come on, come up with something better to get him out of this bad situation.
So stuff happens because it needed to happen.
Because it needed to happen, yeah. So I had bought this back whenever I was listening to that first volume, and I was enjoying it. And then after the second volume, I probably would not have ordered this. But this is from Titan Comics. This is Elric the Dreaming City. It is 2 issues, and it is I think it is supposed to be it's almost like it's a retelling of a Michael Moorcock story, but I'll be brutally honest, this is not anything like I remember the story was it's roughly, it has some similarities, but there's also a lot of things that get changed. Mm-hmm. So I guess maybe they changed it just so they have something, a slightly different story here inside of this 2-issue series. I also feel like the 2 issues wasn't enough to try to properly tell the story, so it felt very disjointed. They kind of had to move things along, maybe at a faster pace than what it kind of deserved. But again, if you are not a hardcore Elric Michael Moorcock fan, then this is a complete skip. And even me, where I enjoyed the first volume, as I was reading this, it just did not translate very well. And I had read you were talking about the Marvel graphic novel earlier for Emperor Doom. Mm-hmm. Well, there's a Marvel graphic novel, Elric, that was written by Roy Thomas and art by, it had a really good artist. Anyway, doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. And even when I was reading it, it's like, I didn't care for it. It's just like I enjoyed that first volume. The second volume got very repetitive, and now it's just like, eh. I had bought the first appearance of Elric in Conan 14, like for my collection, and now it's like, I'm coming to dislike it so much. I'm probably going to sell that book because it's just like, it doesn't have the same.
Yeah.
I don't think as fondly of it as I do, as I did whenever I purchased it. So these Titan Elric books, I call them a hard pass at this point, unless you're just a huge Elric of Melniboné fan.
So is Moorcock both he's the writer and the artist?
Well, no, okay, so Moorcock is the writer of the books.
Oh, I see.
They are adapted into comic books. Marvel's done some. Pacific Comics did some many years ago. And now I guess Titan Comics has the license for the character.
Okay.
So yeah, so he was just a writer.
Okay. But
they were adapted, like I said, by Marvel by Roy Thomas. The author's last name is Blondell for the Titan series. I don't remember who adapted them for the Pacific series. So
gotcha.
All right, CLZ Shake.
CLZ Shake.
CLZ Shake. You ready? Or you want me to go?
Oh, you go ahead. I need to pull it up.
Okay. I'm going to shake that up and see what I get here. Oh, big surprise. All right. So, okay. So, Micronauts. What issue number is this? Oh, issue number 34, written by Bill Mantlo, cover artist Bob Layton. Hey, Bob Layton, we've already talked about him once with regards to Hercules.
Yep.
But hey, cover inker Klaus Janson. Interior pencils, Pat Broderick. So I am looking at the cover, and I do not remember what goes on in this particular issue. At this point, they have introduced a new character, and I have also forgotten what the character's name is. But yeah, so there's a new Micronaut that's included in the list, and I don't know who it is. I got Bug, I got a Courier, I got Marionette, I got Arcturus Rand on the cover, and I don't remember what this other red furry-looking guy is. So he probably wasn't an original Micronaut, and it doesn't tell me in the list there either as well. So I unfortunately don't have anything really to say about this issue, though I have decided that since my 2 read boxes are getting smaller, I'm probably at some point going to be able to slide ROM and the Micronauts series into my 2 read piles to start going through those again. Hopefully I'll start reading those and give myself a little refresher on these characters, so that way next time I open up one of these whenever I do a shake, I'll actually be able to say something about the book. So there you go, Micronauts number 34.
Well, there's no way I could even come close to predicting what I shake. I don't have anything that's really a vast majority over other comics. So, all right, let me shake. And I got...
Shake it again. Nothing. You're not shaking hard enough.
There we go. Okay.
Okay.
Hey, we have Flash, Volume 1, number 165, which features the wedding of Barry Allen and Iris West. This came out in November of 1966. And yeah, one of the true blue married couples in DC Comics history, Barry and Iris. They tie the knot, and I know certain people that actually do collect covers with weddings on them, and that's what this has. It has a big head cover of the cover show. It was like the preacher's eye view looking out at the congregation, and Barry and Iris turning it behind them, saying they see the Flash running up, and the Flash is saying, "Stop the wedding. Iris is marrying the wrong man." Of course, that can't be happening because, right? Barry Allen and the Flash are one and the same. So
one and the same,
yeah. So it was written by one of the Silver Age greats for DC, was John Broome. Penciler was Carmine Infantino. Murphy Anderson did the cover, and I've never read this. I bought it for $5 back in who knows when, but I've had it for a while, I'm sure. Yeah, got it in a 4.0 condition, so not bad, but It's even got that checker box top because, I was 65,
Oh,
66. You had the checker box.
okay.
Yep.
I know the cover you're talking about. I've seen that cover
Yeah.
before. So,
Yeah, I wouldn't. I'm not even going to start trying to collect those kind of covers because I already have too many. I've got my burst through covers. I've got my
hmm
Gulliver's Travels color covers, and too many themes that I like.
All right. So, Mike, do you remember what we have coming up on episode 205
I
of the Campus
do.
Comics Cast?
I do. So our next episode is 205, and we will feature pre-orders that covered the comics and books coming out in May of 2025. It's the March 2025 catalog or solicitations, but it'll be books coming out in May. So be there or be square.
Okay. And I tell you, what, we might as well remind because I've been including the ad at the end of the last couple of episodes
hmm
for the JSApril. Do you want to talk real quick about what's going
Oh my
on there? Just a
gosh.
reminder for everybody for JSApril.
Yeah, we'll be Scott and I, and as the Campus Comics Cast, we're participating in an event called JSApril that is involving podcasters and bloggers from all over, you know, all over the geekdom, and we're going to cover a story that I don't have the issues in front of me. But we're gonna record a story of the JSA in the 2000s. It's a 5-issue arc, and we'll be taking part in this. If I have all the solicitation stuff, I would have said I'll do it next time. But I do have very specific things for if you even put in hashtag JSApril, you're going to find a lot of hits of other podcasters and bloggers that are putting out material. So I'll be sure to make sure we mention this on our next episode of the Campus Comics Cast, so we have all the details. It's a really cool, organized event, and it's a lot of fun. Just joining forces with other folks that are enjoying the same kind of stuff.
Yeah, I was trying to jump back through our Facebook feed to find those issues, but it was like what, like 79
It was
through
like 68 through 70
or 6.
something. Yeah,
Oh, okay. Here's where we talk about the. Here's the spots.
yeah.
I guess I have to go back too far for me to
I mean, the important
actually
thing while
find
you're
them.
looking, the important thing to remember, folks, is that it's April. Keyword JSA, keyword April, and
hmm
hashtag JSA April. This is all going to be coming out. All this stuff will be out in April, the month of April. So we have some time. We'll be talking about giving a more
hmm
timely announcement about what to look for and where in our next episode.
All right, and if Mike, if somebody wanted to reach out to you beside podcast at bergcomics.com, where might they do that at?
Well, uh, among a couple different ways, the first way I would recommend is Mike at. Well, I take it back. That's not the first. That's not the first way. The first way is just go to our Facebook page for Campus Comics Cast and leave comments. That's an easy way. It's quick, but you can certainly leave an email uh, to me at Mike at comicshoproadshow.com, or you can also find me on Blue Sky under the same type of handle. There's only one of me, only one under that name, so you'll find me. But you can send comments that way too. I'm still trying to get the hang of. I'm not a huge social media person, so it's not like But I have transitioned over to Blue Sky because there seems to be a lot of folks that are into comics and this stuff out there as well.
And I'm Scott Reed. You can find me at bergcomics.com, BURG comics.com, with links to my social media pages and my eBay store. And I do want to plug if you are within 2 or 3 hours of Evansville, Indiana on March 8th, there's a Southern Indiana comic book show, and it's got 20 or so comic book dealers. 95% of what you see for sale there is comic books, none of the other sorry nonsense that we get at some of these other pop culture shows. So this has become my favorite comic book show to set up at and to sell at and to talk to people. So if you're in 2, 3, 4 hours, I think it is worth your time. And that's Saturday, March 8th. You can go to Facebook and just search for Southern Indiana Comic Book Show. And we'll be back soon with pre-orders and episode 205.
By the Zesty Zither of Zeus.
Back in 1940, 8 sensational heroes united to create the world's very first superhero team, the Justice Society of America. Now, 85 years later, we're gathering podcasters and bloggers from around the globe for a month-long celebration in an event we're calling JSApril. Throughout April 2025, join dozens and dozens of podcasters and bloggers as they each share their own unique tributes to the original and greatest superhero team. Get ready for an all-star month of beloved characters, fascinating insights, and incredible stories. Follow the action on social media with the hashtag JSApril, and visit our website for a complete list of participating podcasters, bloggers, and what they're each covering at fireandwaterpodcast.com/JSApril.